At number 10, I've got Penn State. This is a program who had a great defense last year. Couldn't figure things out on offense, but I've come to expect them to continue to do that year in and year out on the defensive side of the football. They've also made changes at offensive coordinator and DC. James Franklin wasn't happy with the output last year. They get both running backs back, and also Drew Aller is going to be his second season at the helm, at least with Penn State. And I'm excited to see what he's able to do, but he's going to have to take a big step forward if they want to be competitive in the Big Ten. At number 9, I've got Oklahoma. I'm excited to see Jackson Arnold at quarterback. I thought that he looked really good in the limited time that we got to see him last season. I think he's ready to take over as the quarterback, and I think he's going to step in and be a top half quarterback in the SEC right away at least. But he has a ceiling that could put him into like the first round eventually once he's able to declare for the draft. Not much attrition going on with Oklahoma, so let's kind of see if they're able to add to what they've already got, but not a whole lot going out at least. And they also had a change at co-defensive coordinator from Ted Roof to Zach Alley. Brent Venables was not happy apparently with the tackling, so he does make a change there. At number 8, I've got Notre Dame. We've seen Notre Dame this offseason make some changes. I think the biggest change that they made was to go get the offensive coordinator from LSU, Mike Denbrock. I know that Riley Leonard was a huge quarterback addition in the transfer portal, but adding Mike Denbrock was absolutely massive for this program. I'm anxious to see what he does with the talent that he has at receiver. We didn't see a whole lot of the receivers being used last season, even with Sam Hartman. Now you bring in Riley Leonard, who is known as a running quarterback, and I'm curious to see if Mike Denbrock is kind of changing what he wants to do on offense to fit the Notre Dame offense. You've only got 1 year with Riley Leonard. How are they going to make the most out of that? Ultimately, for Notre Dame, I just want to see what they're able to do at wide receiver and on the outside with Riley Leonard and Mike Denbrock before I put them any higher. At number 7, I've got Missouri. Luther Burden in year 3 and Brady Cook returning will be huge for this offense, but losing Schrader is going to hurt. They replaced Schrader with a Georgia State running back. We don't really know what he's going to look like in the SEC, but Schrader was a playmaker. He was one of the best playmakers in the SEC last season. How much of an effect is that going to have on Missouri? They also added an offensive lineman to help in the run game and recruited the number 1 defensive lineman, Williams Nwaneri, out of the state of Missouri. So he should help shore up that defensive front. Ultimately, I think that Luther Burden's got to be the biggest playmaker. He's got to have the biggest season he's ever had for Missouri to make a push for the playoff this season. With Texas and Oklahoma stepping into the SEC, their schedule gets a lot tougher. Can they, if they want to improve from what they had last year in 2023, we've got to see Luther Burden be a huge part of that. Number 6, the team we were just talking about, Michigan. Losing a lot on offense. McCarthy is the most notable because I think that he could have come back and really done himself a favor and could have learned a lot and benefited from another season. But he decides to forego that extra season, enter the NFL draft, and also, of course, Blake Corum. You know, he was their best running back, probably their best offensive player in general. And at wide receiver, Roman Wilson, you know, easily their best wide receiver. That was a huge loss for them. How are they going to bounce back from that? They tend to have a great offensive line year in and year out, but they're losing some weapons around that offensive line. So what are they going to be able to do on offense? That's kind of the big question here for me. I mentioned earlier, they haven't really used the transfer portal very much. And once the decision for Harbaugh is made, maybe they hit the portal a little bit harder. But right now, they're just remaining stagnant. And it's kind of tough to watch for the reigning national champions. At number 5, I've got Ole Miss. Ole Miss all the way up to number 5. It's hard to believe that they've made the changes that they have and have improved their roster so much that they're already a top 5 team. This year, they loaded up this offseason on the defensive side of the ball in the transfer portal. They got Walter Nolan, who's just an absolute stud from Texas A&M, 5-star interior defensive lineman. Also get Prince Yu from Florida off of their defensive line. He's an edge player. A huge get for them there. And they replaced the loss of Judkins, who's headed up to Ohio State, with Logan Diggs from LSU. And Judkins is kind of irreplaceable. I think he's a really good running back, but Logan Diggs was the best option that you could have done there. Hands down. I think he's going to come in and do what you need him to do. Pair him up with Ulysses Bentley. He's going to do just fine in this offense. And staying on offense, Juice Wells, if he stays healthy, he's coming over from South Carolina. I think he's a big addition, and couple him with Trey Harris, who's coming back. So I'm excited to see what the Ole Miss offense is going to do. But defensively, they just loaded up in the portal. And so the question to me is, Kiffin's shown an ability to coach. He's done well with less players in a lot of cases. Well, now he's got as good a lineup as most teams in the SEC, at least. So what is he going to do with that? And the big question is whether or not he can get the team to come together and gel. But if he does that, this team will be very dangerous. At number 4, I've got Texas. I've got the Longhorns. They could be higher. I think on some lists you could see them as high as 2. But for me, the biggest question mark is Quinn Ewers coming back. And ultimately, I just haven't been too impressed with him. He's been up and down. He's had good games and bad games, and he's been injured a lot in his career. So if he takes a step forward, this is a team that can go win the national championship. And in the transfer portal, they've loaded up. They've gotten Isaiah Bond, Nye Black, and Blackshire from Alabama, plus Bolden and Golden at wide receiver, and elite defensive players in Trey Moore and Andrew Makuba. They're not losing a ton in the transfer portal. And Texas, to me, is just a team that's coming into the SEC. They have a chance to win it all, to win the SEC, to win the national championship. I think that a lot is riding on Quinn Ewers. And by the way, they have a really good backup in Arch Manning, who's got a lot of pressure on him as well. So if Quinn Ewers isn't able to get the job done at quarterback, we'll see what Arch Manning can do. At number 3, I've got Oregon, the Ducks. Third year under Lanning. He's still learning how to be a head coach. Made some mistakes that cost them at least one win last year. But in the transfer portal, they get Evan Stewart, who is probably their biggest add. But also at quarterback, they bring in Dylan Gabriel from Oklahoma and Dante Moore from UCLA, kind of as insurance for the veteran quarterback in Dylan Gabriel. They also add some pieces on defense as well in the portal, and I have a feeling that they're not done there. Big NIL package in Oregon, in Eugene. So I'm anxious to see what they're able to do. They're going to utilize that this year and try to be a contender in the Big Ten in their first year. At number 2, obviously, it's Ohio State, right? For starters, they just got Caleb Downs, possibly the best safety in college football. And he's going to play a major factor on defense and also in the punt return and kick and return game. Heck, he might even take some snaps on the offensive side of the football. This guy's a playmaker. I'm anxious to see what he does at Ohio State. He's going to join Jim Knowles, who's the defensive coordinator for Ohio State. And Jim Knowles is returning basically everybody on defense. And Downs now allows him to play in a 4-3-4 or a 4-2-5 if he wants. So you can add some extra packages as well. Will Howard is coming in to replace McCord. I'm anxious to see what he does. He's got more weapons than he's ever had. Same with Bill O'Brien, right? More weapons than he's ever had. I think that they upgrade at wide receiver and play calling. And also Quinshon Judkins comes in as the 3-down back, to pair him with Henderson, I think is a great 1-2 punch. At number 1, look, this team's going to be number 1 on most preseason top 25 lists. It's Georgia, right? This is the team that maybe should have won the national championship last year had they gotten a shot. They bring back most of their defense. They replace what they lost in the secondary with very talented young players. Carson Beck, for me, is my pick for the Heisman this season, just given what we've seen from him and what we think that this offense will be coming up in this 2024 season. And then add in Trevor Etienne, who's a dynamic back, that much needed dynamic back in this Georgia backfield. He's going to be running behind one of the best offensive lines in the country. They also brought in London Humphreys, Colby Young, and Michael Jackson at wide receiver. All these players will get some playing time, but ultimately this will add to the depth and give my Heisman pick for the season, Carson Beck, some weapons to work with. So that's my